In April of 2020, a security researcher typed an IP address into his browser. No login, no password, no authentication of any kind. And there it was. 8.6 million records of vehicle movements across Sheffield. Number plates, timestamps, camera images showing the drivers' faces, pedestrians caught in the frame, all of it just sitting there. Your data out there on the open internet, free for anyone to find, free for anyone to access. Sheffield Council had written a 32-page document about their automatic number plate recognition system. 32 pages, and the word privacy doesn't appear in it once. Hey, I'm Andy, this is The Fine Print, and I've been going through every major UK data breach that the UK government has been responsible for over the last 2 decades. Every lost disk, every unencrypted spreadsheet, every password that was just the username typed again. And I did this because the government has announced that every person in the country will need a digital ID, one that stores your face scan, your passport data, your biometric information, and they'd very much like you to trust them with it. So, I did my due diligence. I thought I'd check their track record. And what I found was, well, let me just show you. Let's start with the one that was supposed to change everything. November 2007, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, the people who collect your taxes, needed to send some data to the National Audit Office. The personal details of every family in the country claiming child benefit. Names, addresses, date of birth, national insurance numbers, bank details. 25 million people. That's nearly half the population. They put it onto 2 CDs. Unencrypted, protected by WinZip, the free software that you can crack and download for free, through the internal mail. Like a birthday card, because if you've ever posted money through Royal Mail, the crisp £20 note probably isn't going to be there when it arrives. The disc never arrived. They never found them. And here's the detail that really gets me. HMRC was asked beforehand whether they could strip out the bank details before sending. They said no, because it would be too costly. The actual cost, when someone eventually checked, £650. They risked your financial data and that of 25 million other people to save 650 quid. The journalist Jeremy Clarkson responded by publishing his own bank details in a newspaper column to prove the whole thing was overblown. Within days, someone set up a fraudulent direct debit for £500 against his account. To a diabetes charity, which is, I have to say, a genuinely inspired choice by whoever did that. But that was back in 2007. That was supposed to be the wake-up call, the moment the government got serious about data security. So naturally, everything got much, much worse. But before we get to quite how much worse, and trust me, we are nowhere near the bottom yet, I wanted to talk about something that connects all of this to your actual daily life. Because data breaches sound abstract until you realize where the data ends up. This video is sponsored by Incogni, and honestly, I couldn't have picked a better fit for it if I tried. When you get a phone call in the middle of the day, and it's a number you don't recognize, and then it's inevitably someone trying to flog you a new boiler or solar panels, and they're asking if you've been in a car accident recently. And you ask them, because I always ask them, hey buddy, where the hell did you get my number from? And then there's this little pause every time. There's a little pause, and then they either hang up or mumble something about marketing databases. A marketing database. That's the answer. Your name, your phone number, your address, your email, it is all sitting in databases run by companies called data brokers. Hundreds of them, in fact. Companies whose entire business model is hoovering up all your personal information and then selling it to anyone who will pay. Scammers, spammers, those lovely people who ring you at tea time and ask about your loft insulation. And you know who gets hit worst by all of this? Because it's probably not you. You're watching a video about data privacy on YouTube. You're at least somewhat clued up. It's going to be your mum, your nan, your granddad who answers every call because he grew up in a time when the phone ringing actually meant something. He's the one getting 4 calls a day from people pretending to be his bank. He's the one nearly typing his card details into a text message because it said it was from Royal Mail. These data brokers aren't just an inconvenience. For vulnerable people, they're a pipeline straight to fraud. And here's the bit that connects to everything we're talking about today. Where do you think they get all that data? Some of it comes from forms, some of it comes from apps and websites, and some of it, there's no way to tell exactly how much of it, comes from breaches. And we're about to spend the next 15 minutes going through a lot of breaches. Every time the government or one of their contractors loses a database, that information doesn't evaporate, it circulates, it gets sold, it gets aggregated, and eventually it ends up in the hands of someone ringing your nan on a Tuesday afternoon pretending to be from HMRC. Incogni contacts these data brokers on your behalf and gets your information removed, automatically across hundreds of sites. And with that unlimited plan, you can send them a link to any website where your personal data is showing up, and their privacy team will handle the removal. But here's the bit that made me want to work with them. They have a family plan. You can add up to 4 people. So yes, you can add your nan, you can add your mum and dad. You can actually do something about these calls instead of just hoping they stop. They're the first data removal service to be independently verified by Deloitte, which, given the number of cowboys in this space, matters. I'm not going to pretend this fixes everything. It doesn't undo the fact that the government posted your bank details on a CD, like a 90s mixtape, but it is the closest thing to an undo button that actually exists, and you can extend it to the people who need it most. Take your personal data back with Incogni at incogni.com/fineprint. Use fineprint at checkout for 60% off an annual plan. Plus, they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Link is below in the description. But right, anyway, where were we? Yes, the Ministry of Defense. In September 2021, a Ministry of Defense official needed to send an email to Afghan interpreters who risked their lives working with the British forces. People hiding from the Taliban. People whose safety depended entirely on the government keeping their identities secret. The official used CC instead of BCC. Oh my god, how are these boomers in charge of anything? 265 names, visible to every recipient, including their profile pictures. The ICO fined the Ministry of Defense £350,000, which sounds like accountability until you remember that's your money. The government fined itself and paid, yet again finding another 500 IQ way to waste your money. 5 months later, it happened again, only this time somehow it's even worse. A spreadsheet containing the personal information of 18,714 Afghan asylum applicants, including names of special forces personnel and intelligence officers, so spies, was accidentally emailed outside the government system. The emergency resettlement program triggered by that single email cost approximately £850 million. That is roughly £13 per person in the UK because some boomer in a position of power doesn't understand how the computer box thingy works. And yet is somehow in charge of spy information. What the hell is going wrong here? You paid 13 quid because someone in the MOD didn't check an attachment. God forbid if they get an email from a Nigerian prince.
Relative and member of the Nigerian royal family, Uncle Atumbe. What?
You know what, Toby? When the son of the deposed king of Nigeria emails you directly asking for help, you help. His father ran the freaking country, okay?
The ICO looked at this one and decided not to fine them. Their reasoning, well, they didn't want to burden the taxpayer. I just need you to try and hold these two things in your head at the same time. The government endangered thousands of lives through an error so basic it would get you fired from any office job in the country. And the regulator decided the appropriate punishment was nothing. Because making the government pay a fine would be making you pay a fine on top of all the money they've already wasted, which means there is functionally zero consequences at all. That's not a one-off. That is a system working exactly as it was designed. And we will come back to that, the accountability question, because it gets significantly worse. But first, I want to talk about the breach that should have been a national scandal and yet somehow wasn't. August 2023, the police service in Northern Ireland received a Freedom of Information request, routine stuff. How many officers do you have at each rank? So someone compiled the response in a spreadsheet, and in a hidden tab in that spreadsheet One they forgot to delete were the surnames, first initials, ranks, departments, and location of every single officer and staff member, all 9,483 of them, in Northern Ireland. The data reached dissident Republican groups within days. Officers were forced to move house. Some left the country. The chief constable resigned. Compensation is expected to exceed £119 million, roughly £450 per household in Northern Ireland, for a hidden tab on a spreadsheet. Around the same time, the Electoral Commission discovered that hackers had been sitting inside their systems for 14 months. 14 months accessing data on 40 million voters. The attackers had exploited vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange, vulnerabilities for which patches had been available for months. Staff were still using the passwords they'd been assigned when they joined. The Commission had failed its own Cyber Essentials test that same year. The ICO's response? Formal reprimand. You've been a naughty, naughty boy. No fine, nothing. So 40 million voters' data compromised because no one installed updates that had been available for months, and the punishment is a stern telling off. One imagines there were some very awkward silences in that meeting at least. And the government doesn't stop at just losing your data. No. It pays companies, private companies, billions of pounds to lose it on their behalf. Yet again, finding another 600 IQ way of wasting more of your money. In March 2023, Capita, the UK's largest outsourcing company, was hit by ransomware. Their security system flagged the intrusion within 10 minutes. Their target response time was 1 hour. They took 58 hours, 2.5 days to quarantine a single compromised device. A terabyte of data stolen. That's 6.6 million people across 325 pension schemes affected. The ICO investigation found that a single admin account had unrestricted access to the entire network. 3 separate penetration tests had identified this exact vulnerability before. Capita just never bothered to fix it. The ICO fines them £14 million, reduced from £45 million. Weeks later, Capita was found to have left benefits data in a publicly accessible cloud storage bucket. No password, no encryption, just sitting there, like Sheffield's ANPR cameras all over again. And then, and I genuinely need you to be sitting down for this one, the government awarded Capita a new £606 million contract for the DWP, Home Office, Ministry of Justice and DEFRA. The chair of the Public Accounts Committee called it extraordinary. I mean, I personally would have used a different word for that one. And they're not alone. Fujitsu still runs the police national computers, and that's the database that tells officers whether someone's wanted or dangerous, while simultaneously being investigated by the Metropolitan Police for the Post Office Horizon scandal, in which their defective software led to the wrongful conviction of over 900 people. Since 2012, the government has awarded Fujitsu nearly 200 contracts worth £6.8 billion. After announcing a voluntary bidding pause, internal documents showed staff were given flow diagrams on how to keep bidding anyway. The system doesn't punish failure, it's somehow promoting it. It's not just Whitehall. Local councils have been getting hammered, and they've got a fraction of the resources to recover. Hackney Council, October 2020, the Pisa ransomware gang got in through a dormant account where the username and password were identical. Not similar, identical. 440,000 files encrypted, records containing residents' race, religion, sexual orientation, health conditions, and criminal history, exfiltrated and published on the dark web. Housing benefits stopped. Staff were working with pen and paper for over a year. The cost was north of £50 million. The ICO's response? Naughty, naughty boys! Just another reprimand. Leicester City Council, March 2024. 3 terabytes of data stolen, passport scans, driving licenses, bank statements for up to 400,000 residents. And because the hackers compromised the central management system, the city's street lights were left on 24 hours a day for weeks. which is either a security failure or the most expensive nightlight in British history. Oh, then there's Transport for London, September 2024, initially described as affecting some customer data. A BBC investigation in early 2026 revealed the truth. Approximately 10 million people had their data stolen. 10 million. All 30,000 TfL employees had to attend in-person appointments just to reset their passwords. Cost £39 million. The ICO cleared TfL of wrongdoing. 2 teenagers were arrested. I'll say that again. 10 million records, 2 teenagers, and the regulator said everything was fine? I don't know, maybe put the bloody teenagers in charge at this point. They can't do it any worse. And here's the important bit. That is your government's track record with data it already has. And now let's talk about the new data it is forcing you to hand over. The Online Safety Act is requiring platforms to implement highly effective age assurance. In practice, that means you, an adult, have to submit your passport, your driving license, or a scan of your face to a private computer before you can access legal content online. The government mandated this. It did not mandate that these companies meet any particular security or privacy standards. There is no public register of approved providers. There is no mandatory privacy framework. The Act itself requires age verification to be technically accurate, robust, reliable, and fair. It does not use the word secure or private. You can probably guess what happened next. AU10TIX, an Israeli verification company used by TikTok, X, Uber, PayPal, and LinkedIn, had its admin credentials stolen by malware in December 2022. Those credentials were posted publicly on Telegram in March 2023, and they were still working when journalists finally discovered them in June 2024. 18 months, a year and a half of open access to identity documents, and the company initially tried to pretend the credentials had been revoked. They had not. In February 2026, another verification company called Persona, used by Reddit and OpenAI, was found to have an exposed front end, revealing that it runs 269 separate verification checks, screens against watch lists, assigns risk scores, and retains your government ID numbers, facial analytics, and device fingerprints for up to 3 years. Discord dropped them immediately, and in November 2025, a company called ID Merit was discovered to have left a database containing over 1 billion identity records, names, addresses, dates of birth, national ID numbers from 26 countries, completely unprotected. No password. Is this starting to sound familiar yet? The government forced you to hand your most sensitive documents to these companies. Within months, that data was leaked. The Electronic Frontier Foundation put it plainly. Age verification is fundamentally incompatible with privacy. The threat is not hypothetical. It is happening right now because the government mandated it into existence. Which brings us to gov.uk 1, the government's digital identity system. 13 million users and counting. It stores your facial recognition data, your passport scans, your driving license. It is the replacement for gov.uk Verify, which was scrapped after burning through £175 million and achieving a 48% success rate against a 90% target. The Public Accounts Committee called it a textbook case of over-optimism. One login was supposed to be the one that worked. Then a cybersecurity whistleblower inside the government digital service identified over 500,000 vulnerabilities in the system. More than 10,000 were classified as critical. The whistleblower escalated their concerns to an MP. The National Cybersecurity Centre found what it called severe shortcomings, including risks to bulk data breach and mass fraud through impersonation. A red team exercise found that attackers could introduce malware without triggering any sort of monitoring or alerts. As of late 2024, the system met just 21 of 39 required cybersecurity standards. Development work had been offshored to Romania without the approval of the GDS chief executive or the NCSC. The original budget was £305 million. It's now past £329 million and is climbing, with the delivery date pushed back 3 years to 2028. The broader digital ID scheme, including something called the Brit Card and a gov.uk wallet, has been estimated to cost £1.8 billion. So let me get this straight. They have lost 25 million records on a pair of CDs. They emailed the identities of Afghan interpreters and spies to the Taliban by pressing the wrong button. They left the police service of Northern Ireland's entire workforce visible in a spreadsheet tab. They awarded £600 million to a company that took 2.5 days to notice it was being robbed. Their regulator fines government bodies roughly 5 pence on the pound. They forced you to hand your passport to companies that left their databases wide open. Their own whistleblower found 500,000 vulnerabilities in the system and got threatened for saying so. And now they want your face. Unlike a password, you can't change your biometric data after a breach. You get one face, one set of fingerprints. When, not if, this data is compromised, there is no reset button. 63% of the British public say it does not trust the government to keep its data safe. That's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition. A parliamentary petition to block digital ID cards gathered nearly 3 million signatures. The government's response was to announce the gov.uk wallet anyway. Big Brother Watch called it the nightmare database state in mobile digital form. An independent cybersecurity expert warned that a centralized biometric database of 50 million records would be a honeypot for criminals. The question was never whether digital identity could work, in theory. I mean, Estonia's had one for 20 years. The question is whether this government, with this track record, these contractors, this accountability framework, and this approach to anyone who raises concerns, has earned the right to ask for your trust. I think you already know the answer to that one. But one last thing quickly. The reason the government keeps getting away with this, the lost disks, the unpatched systems, the contractors who fell upwards, is because most people don't know it's happening. These stories get a day in the news cycle and then disappear. The government is counting on that. They're counting on you not knowing the full picture because the full picture is so damning. So if this video told you something that you didn't know, share it. Send it to someone. The more people who understand what's been done with their data, the harder it becomes to pretend that everything's fine. Information is how things change. It is literally what this channel's for. And of course, if this has made you angry like it bloody well should do, well, subscribe. I'm Andy, and this is The Fine Print. And let's face it, your data was never safe.